You want to work construction? Great. You want to be a doctor? Great. You want to be a lawyer? Great. You want to be a nurse? Great. What? I want to be a professional wrestler. No, like don't we do that to others? Don't we kind of wonder what do you mean a professional wrestler? Well, it's a real profession. And if you got the guts to go after it, it can be a dream come true. Jason Sanders, the one J Son Esquire, next on Purpose Under Pressure. Oh, the heat is on. Let's get cooking. This is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about people, regular folks just like you and me, who are on purpose. We've got a why. We know why we're doing what we're trying to do. We wake up in the morning and swing our legs out of bed and put our feet on the floor, and we've got a purpose. But the things that happen along the way, I call it pressure. And it's either going to keep you knocked down or it's going to give you something to rise up against. And that's what this show is all about. It's called Purpose Under Pressure. If you like this show, please do subscribe or give us a thumbs up or a like. It lets other people know that this show is worth listening to. And that's what we're trying to do here, is motivate others, give others support, let them know that it's not always as hard as they might think it is, but it's always worth overcoming. Purpose Under Pressure is brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group, serving sales professionals nationwide from their Akron and Columbus, Ohio locations. They're also in Jacksonville, Florida. They provide sales training, business growth opportunities. They help you who are trying to generate revenue, business partnerships, things like that you're trying to make your business grow. That's what they do. The difference is they do it right. They do it on purpose. They do it with real solid fundamental selling. It's not schemy, it's not gimmicky, it's not schmaltzy. It's real people making real deals. And that's kind of what makes the world go around. So if you're looking for that kind of thing for your team, that is Sandler by the Ruby Group. You can check them out online at therubygroup.sandler.com. This is Purpose Under Pressure. And, sometimes, folks, you got to throw it all away and go after it. Everything you've built, everything you've tried, everything you've done, everything you thought you wanted to do. And sometimes you chuck it and you go. Because if you don't, then you're succumbing to that pressure and what you were really meant to be. And that's what this show today is all about. My guest is the one J Son Esquire. He is a professional wrestler. He's getting it done. He's also Jason Sanders. He's a licensed attorney. And that's what this is going to be about. The one J Son. Talk to me, brother.
Brian, thank you so much for having me. Listeners worldwide, it is your pleasure to join in, to be graced by the presence of the one J Son himself. That's right, God's most accomplished gift, pro wrestler, attorney, you name it, I've done it all. Brian, it's a pleasure to be here.
So this is awesome because I know you as Jason Sanders. I now know you as the one J Son, and you are going after it. Now, let's go ahead and bring people into reality. When I knew you, you were, I think, working in development in a hospital, and you were signing up to be trying to be a lawyer, and you were doing all these things. We're going to talk about that. But what I want to talk about now is you wanted to be a wrestler. You are a wrestler. And I want to give everybody a little idea of what's good in the world of the one J Son. What is happening that's great, that's really on purpose for you right now? Tell me about being a wrestler.
Wow. When people talk about living their dream, brother, I'm doing it every single day right now. You're exactly right. The majority of my life, I kind of let the world dictate to me what I was supposed to do. I let people tell me, you have this talent. This is how you should be doing it. And through that, I was able to gain a lot of valuable experience in a lot of various different career fields. I went to law school in my late 30s. I had a 14-year career in college athletics and video production. I worked specifically for the coaching staffs and was responsible for making sure that all of the practices and games were videotaped and turned into cut-ups is what we called them. And that's how we scouted ourselves and scouted our opponents. I transitioned out of that. I got tired of the instability in the career. I mean, it was an amazing job, a lot of amazing experiences. Got to participate in the 2008 national championship game. I was with the University of Oklahoma. We lost to the Florida Gators and Tim Tebow. We had a Heisman Trophy winner. We had 4 top 10 first-round draft picks. It was an incredible career. but there was some instability with it. And so I wanted to try to start finding that purpose a little bit. And I knew I wanted to put in some roots. My wife did as well.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, we were living in Ohio and kind of felt like that's where we were called to be. So she was pursuing a career in education. I started pursuing a career in nonprofit fundraising, working in higher education, and then eventually a local children's hospital. We became foster parents during that time. I went to law school. So I had a lot on my plate, and felt like I was doing everything the world expected of me, right? I had all of these opportunities, and here I am trying to find my purpose and way in the world. I've graduated law school now, and I just didn't feel complete.
Yeah. You seemed
So
complete when I knew you. You were going through those things, and you seemed to me to be very put together, very accomplished, on track. Not that there's anything wrong with what you're doing now. It's just I want you to let you know that was that a false face at the time?
not necessarily at the time. I think it was just more of um, that sense of accomplishment, and knowing, hey, I've taken some challenges head on. I've exceeded expectations, not only my own but those of others. And I was finding success in each of the different career fields. But at the end of the day, I never felt satisfied. I
Yeah.
loved what I was doing. I loved working with people who had resources to make a meaningful difference in the world. And that's what philanthropy was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so to be able to take my skills in terms of uh, getting to know people and communicating with them about their passions and their philanthropic interests, and how we could marry those passions with opportunities at the institutions I was at was meaningful work, and it was transformative. Um, but there was still something missing. Uh,
And let's talk about that, because for a lot of folks, there's a lot of missing for a lot of folks. And yet we show up, we do our job, we come home, we pay the bills, we raise the kids, right? It's not always perfect. Something happened in your life, I think, that caused you to make a choice. Can you walk me through some of those tough times, and even before we got into the wrestling part?
yeah. So I guess to kind of set the stage, and you've heard me talk about this before. If you recall, back in my prior career and prior home, I had a nice backdrop with some championship belts. They're on the shelf over here behind me now. I don't know if you can see them,
Yeah, oh
but
yeah, we got them.
yeah. So it was a way for me at that point to kind of start embracing the pro wrestling side of me. I spoke openly and freely in our different meetings about the belts and why I had them
Yeah.
on display. My earliest memories were watching pro wrestling in my dad's lap as a kid. But as life would have it, I recall we would go out in public, or we'd be around other adults, and I'd start talking about how my dad and I watch wrestling, and he would say, "Oh, I don't watch that stuff. That's fake." Da 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 da. And it kind of gave me a complex about it.
Wow.
So I was, for the longest time, I was kind of a closet wrestling fan. And so when it exploded in popularity in the '90s, I was kind of offended a little bit. I was like, "Wait a minute, you guys." You didn't go through everything I did in the '80s and '90s to get to this really popular point.
Yeah.
But when my parents got into it, they started embracing it at that point. And it was just something that had always been a part of my life. And then in 2018, this is where the waters kind of get muddied a little bit. We've got two stories converging at once. First of all, my wife and I were going through IVF. I had been diagnosed in 2017 with infertility, and it was a unique disease or condition in me that was limiting the production of sperm, and so it was going to require different surgeries. And we had one pregnancy. Unfortunately, we only had that pregnancy for just under 10 weeks. And 3 weeks after that, we lost my dad to lung cancer. And so that was a very difficult time. But 2 weeks before he passed, I went down to visit him, and he was a huge Alabama Crimson Tide fan. He still lived in Alabama. And so I had plans to come down and we were going to watch the Alabama game that Saturday. And for those of you that have dealt with loved ones who have gone through cancer or other life-ending diseases, you know it's not pretty. You know the end-of-life stages are they're not fun, and that day was no exception. And so I had built up in my mind this wonderful Saturday I was going to spend with my dad and watch football, and it just wasn't in the cards. He didn't feel well. So the next day, we're just kind of hanging out, and I'm flipping through the channels, and I realized that there was a wrestling pay-per-view on. And so I said, "Hey, Dad, you want to watch the show tonight?" He said, "Yeah, let's do it." And, about 10 minutes later, he started asking for Dr. Pepper and popcorn. And Mom pulled me aside a little bit later and said it was the most life she saw out of him the last couple months of his life. And of course, he passed away 2 weeks later. But so the last thing I got to do with my dad was sit and watch wrestling with him and see that joy return in his life, and see what it did to my mom too.
Yeah.
So after that, I kind of really decided I wanted to embrace it. And that's when I put the belts on my wall, and it became really kind of a focal point of a meeting with me, if you recall.
I do.
Every meeting, it would start off, somebody would ask a question about the belts. And
yeah, they'd wonder why you had the belts up, because you wouldn't expect to see belts. And I think a lot of people, like what your parents said before, wrestling, blah 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 blah.
Right.
They didn't put that entertainment world together with you, and yet for you it was very real.
Oh, it was very real. I will tell people to this day, I learned my right from wrong from pro wrestling. Pro wrestling in and of itself is storytelling. It is, if you watch any product today, it is a long-term story from the beginning of the company until present day is just one story. And sometimes those stories overlap with other companies and the career of the character. So for me, it's been a lifelong story of good and evil and integrity and what's right and what's wrong. And as I've gotten older, I've really kind of been puzzled as to why there was such a bad reputation about an industry that really does a lot of good in the world. It brings joy to children. You see all the time the wrestlers, they visit children's hospitals.
Yeah.
John Cena's known for the most make-a-wishes being granted of any entertainment celebrity in the world. There's just a lot of good.
It's interesting that we encourage our kids to do whatever they want. We old folks tend to give them 5 or 6 roads to go down, and because we haven't figured it out yet. But if they wanted to be a dancer, if they wanted to be an artist, or if they wanted to be an author, we'd say go go go. If they wanted to be a rock star, like, we'd support that. And yet professional wrestling, not so much. I'm interested because that's the old person point of view, right? I think you probably dealt with that.
Right.
At some
Especially
point,
being
though,
an attorney.
especially being an attorney, that's what I want to ask about, because at some point you had to say, I have to stop being an attorney, or I have to stop working in development, or I have to stop this yesterday's Jason life, and I have to start this next one. And that required a lot of guts. And I'm interested in how that decision took place.
Yeah.
Because you're all in, right? The one Jason, you are all in.
I am all in at this point. It's funny how the world works. You talk about it, and I think most people that are familiar with the story, they have the same perception, right? There had to be a come to Jesus moment, if you will, where I said, okay, this is it. But that's not how it happened at all. I had a lot of success professionally. And as people know, no matter what stage of life you're in, there's going to be different stresses. And I want to make it very clear to your listeners and anyone out there that this touches. It doesn't matter how much money you are. It doesn't matter what level of success you think you've achieved or haven't achieved in life. Stress is stress. Stress can be debilitating. Stress can be caused from all different factors and avenues in life, and it will have significant impact on you and your loved ones. And so being aware of stress and the pressure that you're facing, regardless of what the cause is, right? It's at the end of the day, it's still stress.
Mm-hmm.
And to use a family friendly example that I'm often fond of right now, if we're running through the park and we trip and fall in a puddle of mud and we're covered in mud, we're not going to get out of that and say, well, look, he's got more mud on him than me. At the end of the day, we're both covered in mud. And so mud is mud, stress is stress. Um, for those that don't know, there's a lot of stress and mental health issues that come just from completing law school.
I bet.
And the bar exam. So they're well documented. They talk about it the entire time you're in law school. They're preparing you for it. And I think a lot of it comes from that final year when you're really, um, grinding, you're narrowing your focuses down, you're getting ready, and you're drilling on that bar exam. And coming out of that, you've just spent 3 months, 8+ hours a day studying, and then all of a sudden, all of it's gone. And so that transition in and of itself can be difficult. A few months later, I was very fortunate to get a new position. And it was a job that was very meaningful to me. The work was very special to me. But 6 weeks, into that job, one of the most bittersweet things that could have happened. And our foster kids of 27 months were finally placed with their forever home. And so my wife and I made the decision when we became foster parents, we were committed to caring for the kids without adopting at the end. We wanted either the children to be reunified with their biological family or to be placed with the best adoptive family.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though that was our goal,
Oh,
it was still very difficult.
it rips you apart.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was 6 weeks into a new job. And as with most positions, there's a 90-day probationary period. And so I kind of needed to be mindful of some things. But after that period, I started going to my supervisor and some of the people and saying, look, I'm really struggling. The kid's leaving. It was more than I thought. And so I started pursuing a medical leave at that point. Meanwhile, as all of that is going on,
there's more.
I
Jeez.
had been board president of a economic development nonprofit. And one of the things I was doing was bringing in a pro wrestling show to our community every year as a kind of a way to show off the industry and let the world know that, hey, this is a family-friendly event. It's a great way for families to come out and spend time together and hopefully have a relationship similar to me and my dad. So as I'm hitting my breaking point in December of 23 and January of 04, I'm also talking to this wrestling company about, hey, I've always wanted to be a part of this. I've always felt drawn to it. What if I was just a manager? What do I have to do? And they said, well, you got to go to our academy. It's a 1-year commitment. There's a financial cost. And they explained all of the expectations. And I was on board with everything but the 1-year commitment. It involved 3 nights a week, plus you had to travel to every show. And being a career person with a family and aspirations of fostering again, I just didn't see it as a commitment I could honor. Well, a couple of weeks later, I got my medical leave, and I started talking with the doctors and everyone, my advisors, about ways I could start addressing my mental health. And one of the things they kept suggesting over and over again was a physical fitness routine.
That sounds like wrestling.
So that, coupled with the notorious gray skies in Northeast Ohio, I started looking for another wrestling school. I had 6 months instead of a year. So the original school was still out of the question. But the first school I looked at had a 12-week program. And it just so happened to be the Nightmare Factory at the time. It was in McDonough, Georgia. And the best part is the Nightmare Factory is owned and operated by current WWE champion Cody Rhodes, who is the son of the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Mm-hmm.
So
now you're back to my generation. Now I remember those guys. Yeah.
right. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, now I've got this opportunity for a paid leave, and my doctors are telling me I need this physical fitness routine. I just explored a pro wrestling school, but didn't have the time. Now I have the time. Why not go for it?
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent the application. One of the other coaches, Coach QT Marshall, responded pretty quickly. And he said, hey, buddy, thanks for the application. Just wanted to let you know, based on your experiences, the window of opportunity to make it big in this business is relatively small. But that said, we'll never say never. We just want to make sure you know that all of that up front before you proceed. And I responded back and I said, man, I've been a fan since I was 5 years old. If all I get out of this is the chance to appear on one show as a manager, that would be a dream come true. So paid my enrollment fee. I also decided to take a 1-week cruise just to kind of clear my head. Things were kind of looking up at this point. And on day 6 of that 7-day cruise, I got a call that the insurance company that was paying the medical disability payments had suddenly ended coverage, and I was now on an unpaid leave for 6 months. Now I had committed several thousands of dollars at this point. So that was a hurdle I didn't expect.
Yeah.
In all of this.
Yeah, because you had a paid leave and you had put some of that money towards the wrestling school and to kind of do the fitness thing and to just kind of try this thing out and everything. And then all of a sudden you're on unpaid leave. You've already spent all the money. Now that's a triple whammy.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I'm with you.
So any mental health gains that I made on the cruise were erased.
Yeah.
With the change in situation. But on the bright side, the deposit and everything else for the camp had already been paid. So might as well still go through with it. So thankfully, I have a very supportive wife who understood the situation and understood that even though it required me moving away for 12 weeks, the end result was going to be a healthier me. And that was the goal.
And that's the goal. And that's kind of what this show is all about. It's purpose under pressure. You needed to get healthy. You needed to do what you needed to do. I'm interested. I believe things happen for a reason. I believe God puts up doors where we're not meant to go and opens up paths where we are. And yet we silly humans tend to knock down the doors that are closed no matter what until they finally bust down and we head the wrong way. It sounds like you were heading the wrong way and God kept opening these doors and you just kept stumbling into them. And now you're on the right path.
Everyone in the organization needs to know how to sell. Sales is the strength of any company. Whether or not you're in marketing, operations, or even finance, everyone has a strong shared accountability towards driving top-line revenue. Whether or not you're client-facing or talking over the phone, you're able to build a stronger level of rapport with the clients. Everyone in the organization shares that responsibility to know how to sell.
And I think God bless you. I think that's amazing. I can see people right now on the other side listening to this show going, geez, I don't want to be a wrestler, but man, there's this thing I want to do. Jason's doing it. And man, that is awesome. So tell me, let's fast forward a little bit. I was going to ask you what your wife thought, but you said she's supportive, and that's what we all need is a supportive wife. That's enough for me. But you've got bills to pay, and you're a family man, but you're doing this thing. How's it going? Talk to me about now. What's happening? Are you making any money? Are you getting some gigs?
Well, as you can tell, the money.
Those are some fancy threads,
The
brother.
money is always there. No, I mean, first and foremost, I mean, I've been very fortunate in my career leading up to this.
Yeah, good.
And my wife as well. We've both been career oriented, career driven people. She's a middle school principal. Our lives have generally revolved around education in some capacity, and so we're excited with the paths that we've taken. Now, keep in mind, this wrestling journey was only intended to be a once a month, on the weekend, fun hobby. So I enroll in the boot camp, and about a couple weeks in, one of the coaches makes mention of the showcase coming up. And so you train for 12 weeks, which I'll be the first to say is not enough time to train to learn everything you need in pro wrestling.
No, because I've seen the videos, and you're getting flipped off. Just like everything else you see on TV is happening to you. You had to learn that in a small amount of time.
Correct.
That's nuts right there.
And it's there's no school out there that claims they can make you a bona fide wrestler in 12 weeks.
Okay.
They can give you a foundation and for which you can go and continue to learn and grow. And that's going to be in wrestling or any other aspect of life, right? You take something, the first big step is taking the big step. And then from there, you figure it out. The paralysis by analysis occurs when we want to be overly prepared before that big step.
Yeah. Now you're speaking every business leader's language out there. Everybody's trying to do it right before they take the step. I know it.
So a couple weeks into camp, they start talking about the showcase, and they raise the possibility of me wrestling. And so I weighed that over. I talked it over with my wife. I mean, it is a physical sport. The contact is very much real.
Yeah.
It hurts. It is.
Yeah.
I have pictures to prove it. And so we talked about it and said, well, if they're offering me the chance, I've paid for the chance, I might as well take it. And so I took part, told them I would wrestle. And we get to the showcase, and it was an amazing night. I had family, I had friends that came out. It was everything I dreamed of. The very next night, they had a paid show that they run in the North Georgia area. And they said, any of you graduates that are still here that want to come to the show tomorrow night, come out and we'll find something for you. So I left the show and was planning to come the next night. And I had told my wife, I said, well, I got my opportunity, had fun as a wrestler, but I fully expected to show up the next night and be a manager. Mm-hmm. Well, I showed up the next night, and as luck would have it, I opened the show against AEW's Jack Jameson.
Okay. Is that a name that people know? That's a big name.
If you're a wrestling fan,
awesome.
you follow wrestling. Yeah, Jack.
And so there you are in the spotlight.
Yeah, here's this guy. He's regularly on TV, and make no mistake about it, he is jacked.
Yeah.
And so to show up and to be trusted to wrestle someone who is a true professional, who has been doing it at the highest level, and then to open the show. Wow. Because for those that don't know the business, right, everybody wants to be in the main event. They want that world title. But there's also something about being in that opening match because it helps set the tone for the night.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the opening and there's the closing and there's everything in the middle, but you were at the opening. Yeah.
Right. So I came away from that night with a loss, but a very positive outlook on the fact that I just had 2 amazing nights as a pro wrestler, and my dreams had come true, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I come back to Ohio now, and I'm ready to pursue this weekend journey. I'm working on getting my health back in order now, and um, trying to get life back on track. And I'm training with this company up in Cleveland, Absolute Intense Wrestling, or AIW. And we had a show coming up, and it was a Friday and a Saturday. And the way they ran these shows was we would do 1 hour shows 3 times throughout the day. So there were 3 shows. I showed up fully expecting to work one show one day. And instead, I ended up working 5 out of the 6 shows.
Is that something you earned, do you think? You did well enough, they kept asking you back?
I didn't ask.
You just showed up when they said, hey, Jason, we need you. Yeah, okay.
I showed up. I was on the card.
Well, if you sucked, they weren't going to ask you back.
That
So let's assume that you did great. Yeah.
was the impression I had.
Yeah.
When I wrestled 3 times on Friday, I came home and I thought, wow, that was amazing. They'll probably not work me at all the next day. I showed up the next day. I was in the first show. Someone got injured in the second show, and they were supposed to wrestle in the third. And so I filled in their spot in the third.
Yep.
So yeah, I came back and had that conversation with my wife, and I said, okay, there's now 7 different opportunities, the 2 in Georgia and the 5 in Ohio, where the promoter had a chance to put me on the card as a manager, and instead they put me on the card as a wrestler.
Yep.
And that was the moment where it was like, wait a second, there's something here.
There's something here. I love that. And you weren't ashamed or afraid to go after it. You saw something there and away you went. And that's the thing that I just think is awesome, is that it was obviously there, but some people will turn their backs even from that. Even the most obvious things. They'll say, no, I'm sure it's just luck, or that's the way it worked out, and they'll go back to their lives. But you went after it. And that is so cool.
Yeah. And then there's, wrestling is an art form. And so with that comes the subjectivity that comes with any art, right? Which means there's different styles of professional wrestling, and there's different tastes. As luck would have it, the style for AIW and Northeast Ohio in general wasn't quite up to par to the Esquire standards, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I just simply mean, my style of wrestling didn't fit with what the fan base in Northeast Ohio appreciates.
You're you need to be down south where they're a little showy, right?
A little bit. And,
okay.
I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm kind of a modest individual. I don't like to brag and show off.
I can see. I'm picturing you showing up to court someday dressed like this. I want to see how that. I bet you'd win that too.
One day I will show up to court dressed like this. But yeah,
So now where are you now? You're in Alabama, right? Is that what you told me?
Yeah. So I had an opportunity. So the Nightmare Factory, run by Cody Rhodes. His dad was Dusty Rhodes. His dad started Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. It was an independent wrestling company in Georgia. He launched it, I believe, in the late 90s, early 2000s. Feel free to fact check me on that. I could be totally wrong. But the Nightmare Factory, since it became a school, has kind of helped relaunch Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. And so it's giving a platform to the graduates of the school and some of the top individual independent wrestling talent in the country. WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment, is far and away the top professional wrestling company in the world. They have launched their WWE ID program. They identified 6 of the top independent pro wrestling schools in the country as feeder schools, where they will they're essentially, for lack of a better term, certified as feeder schools to WWE. So they're going to look at the talent. And then they will identify talent to label them as
Mm-hmm.
WWE ID prospects.
Mm-hmm.
But
Minor leagues per se. Yeah.
we'll
Yep.
say yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the Nightmare Factory was announced as one of 6 of these schools a few months after I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so just knowing
Yeah.
as a kid who grew up a lifelong pro wrestling fan, knowing that now I've been trained
There's a door there, man.
by Cody Rhodes,
Yeah.
who learned and filtered the good and bad from the American dream and gave me the best of the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And QT Marshall and Coach Luke Sampson and Coach Billy Gunn and all of these guys who are so passionate about this business that they're willing to help make stars out of people who are just as passionate about the business as they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's super cool.
And so is that the dream? Is that what you want? I want people to know that you're accomplishing your purpose. And is your purpose the WWE main event?
Ooh, my purpose is to shine a positive light on the world of pro wrestling. That's my purpose.
Okay. What
Um,
about your goal? So I love that purpose. I think that's awesome. You're going to do it right and you're going to do it well. But how far are you throwing this ball, man? How in are you? Are you going all the way to
I'm gonna
WWE?
I'm gonna throw it until the arm is gone.
Rock
It's
on, brother.
Um,
Love that.
it's been one of those things. There was a show booked, this Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. They had booked a show in October of 24 in Alabama, and unfortunately, that show got canceled. But I had reached out leading up to the show. It was in Huntsville. This is where I was born, and I said, "Hey, it would be the most meaningful thing in the world if I could come wrestle in the town that I was born in." Again, unfortunately, the show got canceled through no fault of anybody's, but it just happens in the business.
Yeah.
So I took the opportunity to go find another show that night. From that, just going to visit that other company came 4 bookings. And so I went back to Ohio and I told my wife, I said, look, I went to Alabama one time and I got 4 bookings. Maybe we should explore me trying to wrestle down there as much as we can. That led us to exploring possibly buying some land next to her family. We're both from Alabama, so it started making sense that way. And then next thing you know, we said, you know what? We were exploring. I was going to drive back and forth, and we did the math, and it was going to be $500 to $600 a month in gas. And I said, well, if I'm going to spend that, I might as well put that toward an apartment
Heck
or
yeah.
something. And here it is. I'm down in Alabama now. She is in Ohio. She's still educating students, being the best principal she can be, but she's supporting me while I'm pursuing this dream. And I most recently got to show up at TCW and was given the opportunity to manage Satnam Singh, 1 in a billion. Now, this guy is over 7 feet tall.
Nuh-uh.
He's over 450 pounds. He's like 7'4". He's a monster. He's been on AEW. He's been seen on TV all over the world. And now he was managed by the one J son, Esquire. And now we got a main event match against QT Marshall, our former coach and mentor, on March 7th. And we're going to show the world why the Esquire is God's most accomplished gift. Because when QT had Satnam and he was coaching and mentoring Satnam, all he was doing was holding him back. Because when you've got 7'4", 450 pounds of pure monster muscle,
Yeah. You'd better never lose.
there's no reason why that man should be on top of the wrestling world.
Yeah.
And so on March 7th, we're going to start with Coach QT Marshall, and then we're going to start our trek toward putting all the gold we can around 1 in a billion Satnam Singh's waist.
This is so cool. I'm just like pumping up down because I just love the energy that you've put into this new life of yours. And it's been, as we wrap up, it's been just a few short years that you've completed a full transition to being really on a down and outs, to being the guy that's going to take these folks, I can't remember all their names, and I'm sorry, I don't mean any disrespect, but to the next level and to accomplish your dreams. I wonder what you, as we wrap up, what would the one Jay Son tell our listeners and viewers out there who are in the same spot? They're in a spot where they're doing their job and they're paying their bills and they're living the life they're told to live, and yet there's this other thing that they kind of wish they could do if they weren't so embarrassed or ashamed to go after it, right? That's your story. What would the one Jason tell that guy or that girl right now?
What I would tell you is simple. Life is nothing but this. This is the good, this is the bad. And in life, you can't have the good without the bad. You've got to have bad to know what good is. If you eliminate all of the bad, you won't have anything to know and compare to the good. So keeping that in mind, you pick your good and your bad. You know that there's going to be bad with whatever decision you make. Every action creates an equal and opposite reaction. Make your choices carefully, make them with integrity, and most importantly, make your choices meaningful and purposeful in terms of bringing you joy. Because there's no sense in walking around this earth doing things that don't bring you joy. If it's dragging you down, if it's bringing you down, you've got to find a way to make a change. And no matter what you've been through, I dare say, go back and ask you 5 years ago or you 10 years ago, if you could ask yourself, are you proud of where I am today, or have I taken a step back? I would say most people would say 5 years ago, if I'm looking at the shoes I'm in today, I would be very happy with where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get too caught up on the goal and the journey toward whatever it is we're trying to achieve. That's why I kind of stumbled with your question earlier about what I want to achieve in this business. I don't know. What I wanted to achieve was I wanted to be a manager once a month. Now, here I am.
Wow.
I am managing a turnbuckle championship superstar against QT Marshall in the main event on March 7th. I haven't even wrestled 20 matches, but I've wrestled against Jack Jameson. I've wrestled against Hornswoggle. I've been involved with Satnam Singh. I've been involved with some of the top talent at AIW. And so I've already reached that goal, so to speak. So everything else is just icing on the cake.
Yeah, I love that.
There's no pressure now, because at any point this can end. And the worst thing that's going to happen is I'll go be a lawyer. I'll go practice law. And so there's some comfort and security in that. But knowing, again, that life is always this.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes it's this frequent, and that's kind of what I was going through. The goal is if we can get it more like this, or even, less extreme and more ripply. But you're going to have good and bad. And so making sure that the good you pick in life is bringing you joy, because that joy is going to outweigh the bad that comes with whatever good you've chosen. Hopefully that made sense.
It made a ton of sense. And living that dream and having that dream almost daily. What do I want to do today? What am I going to do right today? What am I going to give up to get what I want today? That's really all we can control, right? We can't control our goals in the future. We can maybe think about it, but all we can do is our very best with every moment we have, and we can either let that moment happen or we can let it go, and you're making it happen. You're living the dream. And I just think that's so cool. If someone wanted to learn more about you, follow you online, whatever they do in the world wrestling world, as far as knowing how to be a supporter of the 1J Sun? How would they do that?
Well, you can find me on Instagram, Threads, X at the 1J Sun. That's TheOneJSUN. So, real quick, if you can see here on my jacket, 1J Sun. I've been using JSUN long before pro wrestling came into my
Yep.
professional life. And so, one of the things I want to advocate for to any of your listeners with power out there, I'm running into issues using the sun emoji as a letter of my name. So when you're looking for me on social media, you want to spell out sun, TheOneJSUN, or you can find me on Facebook at the 1J period Esquire. And you're going to see me on TV here sooner rather than later, and on the top of the pro wrestling mountain before you know it.
I know it too. That is so cool. The 1J Sun Esquire, Jason Sanders, thank you so much for being on the show. I'll tell you what, I think people are so afraid to fail at reaching the big picture that they never take the one step today. I've been there. I know you were there. I know most people are like, I really want that. Oh, but what if people think I'm nuts? What if people think what? Man, take it today. And I think the reason I do this show is to let others know that they should take it. They should go after it and get it. They should not bow down to the pressure that other people put on you, or even you put on yourselves. You want something, go get it. This life's too short to wait. And so, all I did in the last 20 seconds here was just give you the credit you deserve for bringing that message to folks. And I'm so thankful that you did. Thank you for being our guest on Purpose Under Pressure.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Everyone, remember, like, follow, share. Let's keep in touch. Let's help lift others up. Remember, pressure makes diamonds, and we'll see you around the ring.
The 1J Sun Esquire, my friend Jason Sanders. He is our guest on Purpose Under Pressure, brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group. Sellers are under pressure to perform, and Sandler helps you to succeed on purpose. You'll find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at brianmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. This was one of my favorite shows. We'll do it again this week, every week. We'll see you next time on Purpose.